Imagine falling in love with someone who seems perfect, only to discover they're watching your every move, manipulating your life from the shadows. What makes Joe Goldberg so dangerously charming? And why do his relationships always end in disaster? Let's unpack this. You is a series that seduces you with a love story, only to reveal the darkness lurking beneath the surface. At the heart of it all is Joe Goldberg, a man whose idea of love is twisted, obsessive, and dangerous. He doesn't just fall in love, he consumes, manipulates, and destroys. But what's most compelling about Joe's story is how each of his relationships reveal a different side of his character. From Beck to Love, Marian to Kate, each woman becomes a mirror that reflects Joe's deepest fears, desires, and delusions. In this episode of Let's Unpack This, we're exploring Joe Goldberg's relationship and what they tell us about his twisted view of love. Why does he seem to crave connection only to sabotage it? And what does his obsession with finding the one say about him, and about us? I'm going to do something different for this video where I'll analyze the entire show to paint the whole picture of Joe and his psychology. So, let's dive in. Joe Goldberg's story begins with Guinevere Beck, a struggling writer who becomes the object of his obsessive affection. But from the start, Joe's interest in Beck is less about love and more about control. Joe doesn't love Beck as she is. He loves an idealized version of her. He views her as a perfect, vulnerable muse who needs saving, turning her into a symbol of everything he wants: love, intimacy, and validation. But this isn't romance, it's obsession. Joe doesn't see Beck as a person, but as a project. From the moment they meet, Joe begins gathering information, watching her social media, following her movements, and even stealing her phone. This obsessive behavior isn't just a way of staying close, it's his way of maintaining control. By knowing everything about Beck, he eliminates the fear of rejection. Joe's obsession escalates as he manipulates Beck's life. He removes anyone he sees as a threat, like Benji and Peach, justifying his actions as protecting her. But his goal isn't Beck's happiness, it's ensuring she relies on him. Joe's love is possessive, a prison disguised as devotion. Joe believes he's saving Beck, but his love is suffocating. When Beck starts to see through his facade, Joe's response isn't to let her go, it's to trap her, forcing her into a fight for her life. His desperate need for control becomes her nightmare. Joe's obsession with Beck is rooted in his need for validation. He doesn't just want to be loved, he wants to be needed, to be a savior. But his love is a form of possession. His stalking, manipulation, and violence are attempts to maintain a fantasy where he's always in control. Joe's relationship with Beck is the foundation of his toxic pattern, a cycle of obsession, control, and destruction that will repeat with each new love interest. Joe Goldberg's search for love takes a dark turn with Love Quinn, a passionate and complex woman who seems like his perfect match. But what starts as a romance quickly becomes a dangerous game of obsession, deception, and violence. After the tragedy with Beck, Joe wants to leave his dark past behind. Love represents a clean slate, a chance to reinvent himself as a better person. But even from the beginning, Joe's obsession with control resurfaces. He stalks Love, manipulates their encounters, and hides his true identity, all while convincing himself that he's changed. Love isn't just another victim, she's a reflection of Joe's own darkness. As their relationship deepens, Joe discovers that Love is just as capable of violence and manipulation as he is. She kills to protect their love, justifying her actions the same way Joe does. But where Joe covers his darkness, Love embraces hers. Despite their shared capacity for violence, Joe cannot accept Love's true nature. His obsession with being the good partner leads him to judge and distance himself from her. Even as he manipulates and lies, he views Love's actions as a betrayal. Joe wants to see himself as a protector, but he can't accept that he's just like her. Their relationship collapses because Joe and Love are trapped in competing fantasies. Joe wants a perfect, loving family, while Love wants an all-consuming, unconditional romance. But their desire to control each other becomes a deadly game. When Love becomes unpredictable, Joe sees her as not a partner, but as a threat to his fantasy of a perfect life. Joe and Love's relationship is a tragedy because they are two people trying to escape their own darkness by clinging to each other. But instead of healing, they amplify each other's worst impulses. Their love is a mirror that shows Joe the truth that he can't accept, that he's not a savior, but a monster. Joe's relationship with Love reveals his deep-seated hypocrisy. He judges her for the very traits he possesses: violence, manipulation, and obsession. But instead of seeing her as a reflection, he projects his guilt onto her, using her darkness to justify his own. Joe's relationship with Love is a tragic mirror, a story of two people who are perfect for each other because of their flaws, yet doomed because they cannot accept them. After the chaos of his relationship with Love, Joe finds something different with Marian, an intelligent, kind, and morally grounded woman who represents everything he believes he wants. But even here, Joe's obsession resurfaces. Marian is a fresh start for Joe, a chance to finally be the good man he believes he can become. Her kindness and compassion draw him in, but they also become a canvas for his fantasy. Joe doesn't just love Marian, he idealizes her as his salvation. He tells himself that if he can win her love, he can leave his dark past behind. Joe convinces himself that he's protecting Marian from her abusive ex, from the dangers of the world, and even from Love. But his protection is just another form of control. He stalks her, manipulates her life, and even contemplates killing Love to keep her safe. Joe's love isn't about Marian's happiness. It's about maintaining his fantasy of redemption. Unlike his previous partners, Marian is perceptive. She recognizes Joe's darkness and refuses to become another victim of his obsession. Her decision to flee isn't just a rejection, it's a wake-up call. For the first time, Joe's finally confronted with a woman who sees him for what he truly is and chooses to escape. Unfortunately, Joe's fixation doesn't end with Marian's escape, it just transforms. In Season 4, he tells himself that finding Marian is about making amends, but his actions show otherwise. He follows her, manipulates her situation, and believes that being with her will erase his past sins. Joe's obsession with Marian isn't just about love, it's about validation. He needs her to believe he's changed because he can't face the truth of who he is. But his desire of redemption is just another lie he tells himself. Joe wants to be a better person for Marian, but he can't change because he won't confront his own darkness. He wants to be loved without earning trust, forgiven without taking responsibility. His obsession with redemption just becomes another prison, this time one of his own making. Joe's relationship with Marian reveals his most tragic flaw, his inability to see himself clearly. He believes that he's capable of change, but only if someone else validates him. His search for redemption isn't about becoming better, it's about being seen as better. Joe's relationship with Marian is the story of a man running from his own reflection, searching for someone who can make him feel like a good person, without ever doing the work to become one. Joe Goldberg's search for love takes its final twisted turn with Kate Lockwood, a woman who is intelligent, ambitious, and unapologetically ruthless. But unlike his previous partners, Kate isn't easily charmed or manipulated. Instead, she represents a new challenge, an equal who is just as morally complex as Joe. But for all her strength, Kate becomes a mirror reflecting Joe's darkest impulses. From the beginning, Joe and Kate's relationship is a performance. Joe assumes a new identity as Professor Jonathan Moore, hiding his violent past under a mask of sophistication. But while Kate is skeptical of Joe's charming facade, she is also hiding secrets of her own. She is the daughter of a powerful and corrupt businessman, and her life is defined by manipulation and moral compromise. For Joe, Kate is a chance to reinvent himself, to become something new, someone better. But even as he tries to escape his violent past, his darkness is never far behind. Kate is drawn to Joe's intelligence and his apparent honesty, but she quickly begins to see cracks in his facade. Her discomfort grows when she discovers Joe's dark side, his fascination with murder, his violent fantasies, and his need for control. Joe's obsession with writing about his violent impulses is a chilling reminder that he has not changed. Kate tries to rationalize Joe's darkness, telling herself that everyone has secrets. But her unease becomes impossible to ignore when Joe refuses to destroy his violent writings, even after she expresses her discomfort. For Kate, these writings are a window into Joe's true nature, a man who's not just haunted by violence, but is still drawn to it. Joe tells himself that he can change, that his love for Kate will save him from his darkness, but his refusal to destroy his violent writings reveals the truth. He doesn't want to change. He wants to maintain his fantasy of control, even if it means keeping a record of his darkest thoughts. For Kate, this is a wake-up call. She realizes that Joe's darkness is not just a part of his past, it's an inseparable part of who he is. Her willingness to accept his secrets turns to fear, and the power dynamic between them shifts. Kate may be morally complex, but she's not a killer, and she cannot live with a man who is. When Joe senses Kate's discomfort, he turns to Bronte, a woman who seems to accept him without judgment. Bronte is kind, trusting, and genuinely affectionate, offering Joe a brief escape from the chaos of his life. In his mind, Bronte represents a simpler, purer love, a relationship free from the darkness he shares with Kate. But this is just another fantasy. Joe's darkness cannot be erased, and his obsession with Bronte is just another attempt to escape his own reflection. He wants to be loved without being known, forgiven without facing his guilt. Joe's relationship with Kate is a tragedy because it offers the illusion of change. He tells himself that he can be a good man, that he can leave his violent past behind. But his need to write about murder, his refusal to destroy his violent fantasies, and his constant deception show that he cannot let go of his darkness. Kate's discomfort is a reflection of Joe's inner conflict. She's willing to accept his secrets until she realizes that his darkness is not just a memory, it's a desire. And when Joe's need for control drives him to Bronte, it reveals the truth he cannot escape. He doesn't want to be saved. He wants to be accepted, even if it means hiding his darkness behind a new mask. Joe's relationship with Kate is the final proof that he cannot change, because he can't face what he truly is. Even when he tries to escape his darkness, he clings to it, preserving it as a secret fantasy that defines his identity. Joe Goldberg is not just a stalker, a killer, or a manipulator. He's a man defined by a series of deeply rooted psychological conflicts. His charm, intelligence, and apparent vulnerability make him a captivating character. But beneath the surface lies a complex web of trauma, obsession, and self-deception. To understand Joe Goldberg, we must understand his behavior through the lens of psychological theory, exploring the conditions and disorders that shape his actions. Joe's obsessive need with connection is rooted in his traumatic childhood. Abandoned by his mother and exposed to abuse from a young age, Joe developed an insecure attachment style. He craves love but fears rejection, leading him to latch onto his partners with a desperate intensity. Joe's relationships are marked with a constant fear of being left behind. This fear drives his need to monitor, control, and manipulate his partners. For Joe, love is not about mutual trust. It's about possession. He doesn't just want to be loved, he wants to be needed, to be the most important person in his partner's life. His childhood taught him that love is conditional, something that must be earned or taken by force. This belief shapes his relationships, turning affection into a form of control. Despite his apparent vulnerability, Joe is driven by a sense of superiority. He sees himself as a hero, a protector who knows what is best for the people he loves. Joe believes that he alone can save his partners, even when his actions hurt them. His justifications for stalking, manipulation, and even murder are rooted in his belief that he is a savior. Joe judges his partners for their flaws, even as he commits greater sins. He condemns Beck for her dishonesty, Love for her violence, and Kate for her moral compromises, while excusing his own crimes. Joe's narrative is always one of sacrifice. He kills to protect, he manipulates to save, but this is a lie he tells himself to manipulate a sense of moral superiority. Joe's need to monitor his partners goes beyond curiosity, it's a compulsion. From Beck's social media to Marian's daily routine, he tracks, monitors, and even invades their privacy. Joe's stalking is a way to maintain emotional safety. By knowing everything about his partners, he can prevent rejection. His obsessive need to monitor his partners is a form of control, ensuring that they can't escape his influence. Even with Kate, Joe's need for control is evident in his violent writings, private fantasies that preserve his darkest impulses. Joe's relationships follow a destructive pattern. He begins by idealizing his partners, only to turn against them when they fail to meet his impossible expectations. Joe sees his partners as perfect, flawless beings who will complete him. This is a fantasy, a way to escape his own emptiness. But when his partners reveal their flaws or assert independence, Joe's love turns to resentment. He sees them as problems to be solved. His feelings shift rapidly from love to hatred, trust to suspicion, creating a volatile emotional landscape. Joe's greatest illusion is his belief that he can change. Each new relationship is a chance to become someone new. Joe, the loving boyfriend, Will Bettelheim, the innocent victim, Professor Jonathan Moore, the sophisticated intellectual. But each identity is just another mask. He doesn't change himself, he just hides his darkness behind a new persona every time. He separates his good self from his violent actions, maintaining the illusion that he's a hero. And even when faced with the truth of his actions, he rationalizes them as sacrifices for love. Joe's need for control is the heart of his pathology. He doesn't just want love, he wants to own it, to shape it according to his desires. His love is a prison, a form of possession disguised as devotion. Joe removes anyone who threatens his relationships, whether it be friends, rivals, or even family. His love is based on an idealized version of his partners. When they fail to meet his fantasy, he turns against them. Even as he tells himself he can change, Joe clings to his violent fantasies, refusing to destroy them even when they endanger his relationship with Kate. At the core of Joe Goldberg is tragic paradox. He wants to be loved, but he cannot allow himself to be known. He wants to be a good man, but he can't let go of his darkness. He clings to the fantasy of redemption, but he sabotages every chance he has to become better. Joe's obsessive need for control, his constant reinvention, and his violent impulses are not just bad habits. They are the core of his identity. He is a man who cannot escape his own reflection because he refuses to face it every time. Joe exhibits traits consistent with borderline personality disorder, including emotional instability, fear of abandonment, and extreme idealization. He shows narcissistic traits, particularly grandiosity and a need for admiration. His compulsive stalking and obsessive behavior reflect elements of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. His constant reinvention is a form of identity disturbance, a symptom often seen in those struggling with unresolved trauma. Joe Goldberg is not just a monstrous person, he is a man trapped in a cycle of obsession, deception, and destruction, a prisoner of his own fantasies. So after watching the final season of You, I found myself with mixed feelings. Despite some issues with the plot, I thought it was a solid conclusion to a really interesting story. But what stood out to me the most wasn't just how Joe's journey ended, it was the ongoing fascination with his character. Even now, despite everything he's done, there are still people who sympathize with Joe Goldberg. I've had discussions with friends and colleagues who defended him, who saw him as a tragic romantic figure, who even criticizes Beck for being unfaithful while excusing Joe's obsession and violence. It made me question it. What is it about Joe that makes him so compelling? Why do people see him as a romantic anti-hero rather than a dangerous predator? For me, the answer is clear. Joe is not a hero. He's an abuser with delusions of grandeur, a man who tells himself he is a savior, even as he destroys the lives of the women he claims to love. His charm, his intelligence, his apparent vulnerability, these are just tools he uses to maintain control. And I think that's part of why people are captivated with him. They see him as complex, and it's not too different from how the characters in the story see him until it's too late. For me, this is why his final fate is so fitting. Joe's journey ends not with redemption, but with reckoning. He's sentenced to life in prison, finally trapped by the consequences of his actions, the monster exposed for all to see. For a man who always believed he could escape his darkness, his prison cell is the perfect final chapter. Joe Goldberg is not a tragic lover. He is a monster who can never escape his own reflection. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mind of Joe Goldberg, please remember to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think made Joe such a compelling character? Was he always destined for this fate, or do you think he could have changed? Let me know. And if you want to see more psychological breakdowns of your favorite movies, shows, and characters, be sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Let's Unpack This. This is Minute Therapy, and we have unpacked this.